Good morning and welcome, board members. It's good to see you all, albeit remotely. Could I remind members that we are being live streamed today to allow for public access, and also that the meeting is being recorded and will be available for subsequent viewing online. We're all familiar with online meetings now, and hopefully everything will run smoothly. Can I suggest that you keep your camera and microphone off unless you are speaking, and remind you to type speak in the chat function or to use the raise your hand function if you would like to contribute. Kirsty and Stephen will be assisting me today to ensure that I get to everyone, but if all else fails, put on your camera and wave your hand, but preferably you try speaking the raise your hand function first. Stephen, could I ask you to give us a position about attendance?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Apologies from Colin Cook, Councillor Rob Davidson, Hugh Carr, Norma Austin-Hart, although Helen Kerrin is here, Professor Griggs, although Jane Morrison-Ross is here. Gavin Stevenson, Chief Exec, is formally being represented by Derek Crichton, the Director of Communities today. However, the Chief Exec may observe the meeting online. Apologies from Jeff Ace. However, Valerie White is attending for the first part of the meeting. John Henderson is also representing the housing sector today on behalf of Maureen Dowden. We also have apologies from Matt Forum, and I would also like to welcome the chair of the IGB, Laura Douglas, to our first meeting and is joining us via Teams. Thank you.
Thanks, and Joanna has advised that there are also apologies from Hugh Carr. Okay, the first item is the draft minute of our last meeting for approval, and can I ask if members are happy that this is an accurate record? You don't need to say anything unless you think it is not an accurate record. I'll take silence as an agreement. Okay, does anyone have any comments or queries arising from the minute? I'm taking from that we are happy to approve the minute and to move on to item 2.
Hello, sorry, Chair, I did put my hand up. Sorry, Chair, it's Helen Kerrin from 3rd Sector Dumfries and Galloway.
Oh, hello, Helen. Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I did put my hand up. It maybe didn't come through. I just had a comment, not the, on the minute, section 3.1 about the regional economic strategy. It's a sort of sideways point, but I don't think it comes up further in the agenda. Obviously, with our regional economic strategy now agreed and the action plan being developed, we just noticed that was ahead of the timeline for the Health and Social Care Partnership Workforce Development Plan, which I understand is going to be developed, brought forward by the AJB in the new year, whereas the action plan is being developed now for the end of the year, I think. So I just wondered whether the board would welcome a report onto how those two kind of key strategies are going to be integrated, given the sort of overlap in the remit, but the difference in the timelines.
Is there anybody who can answer that point at all? Don't know if we...
Leader, I'm happy to try and coordinate between both organisations and bring a report back to November if that would be helpful, if that's what Helen's asking for.
Yes, if the rest of the board think that would be helpful. It was certainly something that jumped out to us at 3rd Sector Dumfries and Galloway.
Okay, if we could maybe take that in at the November meeting. Right. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay then, anything further? I'm not quite sure why your hand didn't come up, but I'm actually maybe ask people first of all to write, if they can remember to write speak or can, it actually alerts me more easily on this particular device. I can't see hands and speaks at the same time, so if people could maybe write speak in the chat function, that would be the easiest way for me. Okay, can we move on to item 2, which is the COVID response renewal and recovery. We have 2 reports to consider today at this item, and this is reflected in the updated set of papers which were issued on Tuesday. I think Richard Greaveson is going to start with an update, but I believe that Serena Dunlop, Mark Thompson and Annie Johnson are also here to provide updates and answer any questions So I'll hand over first to Richard.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, colleagues. As the Leader said, there's two papers before you today. The first focuses on the current status and response issues. In this regard, colleagues, we had a very good discussion at the Strategic Local Resilience Partnership last week. We focused on the significant challenges facing NHS colleagues and indeed other partners who are now experiencing key challenging workforce issues as well. I know that Jeff, perhaps through Valerie this morning, was keen to update members of the Community Planning Partnership Board in regard to those issues. And also Annie and Mark, as you said, Leader, are also on the call in terms of updates specifically to vaccination, community testing, and indeed other areas of response. The second paper focuses on recovery and further to guidance from the Community Planning Executive Group and the Community Planning Partnership Board. The new recovery plan is presented, which focuses on specific actions that require a multi-agency approach and takes cognizance of the Scottish Government and local government joint approach to COVID recovery. We're also asking colleagues to consider nominations from each partner today in order for my team to work very closely with you in taking these actions forward. And Serena, who's been leading on this work, is very happy to update when we get to that paper too, Leader. With your blessing, Leader, as I say, I think Jeff was really keen to update specifically on the challenges in NHS. I don't know whether this is an appropriate point for Valerie to update, but I'm in your hands, Leader. Thank you.
Yeah, be happy to take an update from Valerie at this point. Valerie?
Thanks very much. I think we are facing significant challenges in health and social care. COVID is superimposed on top of that, but we have seen increased demands because obviously we had to stop a lot of care provision during the pandemic period, and there's an awful lot of things that need to be caught back up on. There's a number of delayed discharges within our system due to some challenges, serious challenges in workforce and particularly the care at home, and I think it was that confluence of workforce challenges that we recognised that is being faced in the NHS, the local authority, and our colleagues in certainly hospitality, but across the business sector as well. There was really a feeling that actually as a partnership we need to come together and take some united action about what we can do in terms of looking to increase our workforce right across the piece. And I think Jeff was really keen to explore that maybe kind of workforce summit type of approach that we could maybe take forward in partnership together. And I think maybe Nick has got his hand up, wants to come back in, and I can do a wee bit of an update on the COVID position. But I think that workforce issue is a key critical challenge.
Thanks. So I'll take any comments or questions about that before we move on to the next.
Lead, if it's possible to come in, just add a comment.
Somebody's got a hand up, I think, but I can't. It's so far away on the screen, I can't actually see who it is.
Yeah, Leader, it's Nick Morris and Derek Crichton have both got their hands up.
Derek, okay, can I take Derek and somebody else had their hand up as well? Nick,
and
okay.
Nick Morris.
Okay, can I take Derek and Nick, please, Derek?
Thank you, Leader, and good morning, colleagues. Just to echo what's been said there by Valerie, very much welcome the importance of that collective action on behalf of all of us, because quite clearly both public and private sectors at this time are facing enormous employment challenges. And at its very simplest level, we're actually seeing bus drivers being very much recruited and headhunted for alternative employment, which from their point of view is potentially better long-term secure employment terms and conditions, and they're attracting a premium, for example, to their employment just now. So that's one very small but simple example, because that fundamentally has a huge impact on our ability to escort children safely to school. So the importance of this issue issue is clear for all partners across, as I say, public and private, and the idea of a workforce summit is something we would very much support. So very much endorse that position, Leader. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Nick.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'd just like to endorse the comments that have been made, really. I think the CPP has recognised for a long time that one of the major challenges facing the area is our population demographics and the reduction in workforce age population. And we've been hit even stronger in the last 18 months by the changes in societal factors connected to things like the Brexit and COVID outcomes, etc. And if we don't, as a group, recognise that as one of our most fundamental challenges, then I think we're going to fail to hit most of our LOIP requirements, because most of the LOIP requirements require us to have a population that's healthy and well resilient to the tasks that face us. So I would fully support that one of the most urgent things we need to address at the moment is a summit of partners. We're all impacted on this equally, and we potentially all are in emergency situations regarding the continuation of our staff teams, both across the private and the public sector. So I would argue this is probably the most significant and sustainable threat to the system at the moment, and one that we all need to get our heads around, and potentially mean that for the next 6 months or so, the CPP orientates itself around receiving reports on what each organisation is able to do to try to support both the growth in population over the longer term, but also identify short-term solutions to some of the critical positions we find ourselves, particularly in the care at home sector for the health services, but clearly I can understand in transport sector and various others, there is an equal problem facing the organisations.
Thanks, Nick. It was identified by the CPP prior to the pandemic that we had an issue around the working age population in Dumfries and Galloway, and obviously the pandemic has just sort of exacerbated and highlighted the problems that we've got. Richard.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, just echo and very much support comments of Valerie, Derek, and Nick. I think they hit the nail on the head. It's absolutely critical that we take forward the workforce issues in the manner that's been suggested. I'm happy to, with your blessing, Leader, to take that forward. I think it's critical to the community planning partnership that we understand the consequences to our communities in terms of these challenges that we face. I'm happy to look at the modelling that's required and really develop that multi-agency response in terms of identifying options available and actions required. So with your blessing, Leader, as I say, happy to work with colleagues, looking at mobilising communities, identifying region-wide capacity, and we'll look at producing, where required, funding and investment plans that will support this. But with your blessing, Leader, happy to take that forward.
Thanks, Richard. I see Gavin Stevens has got his hand up. Gavin.
That's it. Apologies, Leader, I'd forgotten how to work Teams to get from there. I very much support what Richard said. Whilst we're focusing on the now, winter is going to be awful for us. And I do believe that long burn of the real pressures we're facing now in the NHS and across that will actually make probably the first few months of next year the worst we've ever seen. And I think we don't really fully understand the impact on our communities of extreme pressures on the health service and other parts of it. So I think that modelling work, I think, is really essential. So we were so successful in mobilising our communities in the third sector in response at the start of COVID. I think if we can get ahead of that to understand what capacity we have to perhaps manage some of these really difficult decisions that we'll have to take through January, February and March to support our NHS colleagues through that period, would be really useful. So I would suggest, I'm meeting Jeff Ace next week, that perhaps we take that forward with Richard and bring a paper back to the Community Planning Partnership before the next meeting, so that partners are able to be informed of perhaps some of the risks and potential solutions that we might bring more detail back to the next meeting.
Thanks, Gavin. Helen.
Hi. Yes, that All sounds very good. I think could the third sector be included in those discussions, Richard? Sorry, my camera's messing around. If we're talking about mobilising communities, then obviously third sector Dumfries and Galloway would like to be a strategic partner in that, as ever. And just on the discussion about the Workplace Summit, which obviously completely support, in the recovery plan, I can't see it as a priority in there. I might be missing it, but unless it's a kind of overarching theme, that for me the discussion just now isn't reflected in the green and grey table that we were given. I don't know if that's a fair comment or not.
Richard?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. So first question, Helen, absolutely. I think third sector Dumfries and Galloway are obviously a key partner in terms of the work that we'll be doing and engaging with local communities, as we've worked with you in the past 2 years specifically in that really proactive and positive way. Yeah, absolutely. Understand the question regarding the recovery plan. The recovery plan focuses on where we felt that there was gaps in the established key strategies and obviously key areas to work together. So I'll take that on board. We'll make sure that features in the plan moving forward. But it does form a key part of each and every individual's recovery plan moving forward. But yeah, we'll bring that together. No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, I can bring, if I can bring Valerie back in, and then also Annie and Mark to give us the rest of the update on the response side of this. Valerie.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, so just really to update in terms of the current position of the pandemic, we saw a peak case rate in Dumfries and Galloway on the 27th of August at 653 per 100,000. That is a case rate higher than we saw a peak in January 2021. So obviously testing, thanks to colleagues, is much more widely accessible now. But I think, you know, that is the scale of things that we were dealing with. And I think one of the heartening things is that although we've had that level of high case rates, the overwhelming of the NHS in a way we would have seen without vaccination has not happened. We have seen slight decreases in the rates since then, so cautiously optimistic, but I think we have to see where we go with that. We do have a number of people in hospital. We also have people in critical care, and there are some outbreaks that we are managing locally, but we are basically effectively seeing widespread community transmission. So COVID does pose a risk to all our communities. Very sadly, we have seen some deaths, but we will continue to see some deaths because it is now sort of becoming almost endemic. Vaccination uptake has been absolutely exceptional, and really want to thank hugely the work and effort that's been put in by all partners in relation to that. We have got the best uptake of all NHS boards in Scotland for our over 16-year-olds, both first and second doses. We're awaiting guidance this week about COVID booster vaccine and the implementation of that, and the flu vaccination campaign, which is much extended this year, is starting from Monday. So huge amount of work, huge amount of partnership effort, particularly from the recovery and response team in relation to delivery of this. But can I please just reiterate to all partners around the table that the existing guidance we do need to follow, and that vaccination uptake, really good keeping hands hygiene, cough and respiratory hygiene, regular testing is so critically important, as is trying to maintain physical distancing as well at these high levels of case rates. So just please do, everyone, keep promoting those messages locally, and I'll hand over to Annie and Mark, who have been doing a fantastic job in testing and supporting us with vaccination. Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Annie.
Thank you. Just to give a brief update on community testing, and just to be absolutely clear on what community testing is, we have 13 static sites across the region which allow us to undertake lateral flow tests for those members of the community who are asymptomatic. And that allows us very much to support the government's messaging around undertaking twice weekly tests. We've been able to augment the mobile testing unit schedule using 2 mobile units that we have. The number of tests that we are undertaking has risen in line with the rise in cases, which I think is a good thing. Members of the community now know that we are there and we're able to support. We are also able to hand out packs of 7 lateral flow devices if people choose to have them at home. It's sometimes easier for people to do that. And again, the numbers that we're handing out have risen massively. Last week we handed out over 3,000 packs, which equates to over 21,000 tests. We also are able to support local businesses if they come to us with a requirement for testing for their staff, and there are a number of businesses locally that we've been able to support, including this week Stena over in Stranraer. And we've also been able to supply tests for the DG Pride Festival this weekend. So testing is certainly becoming much more widespread, more known. We're able to support, as I say, in terms of any outbreaks. And our numbers continue to rise. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Annie. And I'll hand over to Mark now, and then I'll take questions with the 3 of you. Mark.
Thank you, and good morning, Lee. Annie have succinctly covered most aspects, so just 2 or 3 other relevant updates and tying back into Director of Communities comments with regards to driving pressures and things like that. We are looking at starting to take a kind of horizon scan look at some of the wider challenges that we will face collectively during winter, because it's that layering of consequences in there as well, and the key lifeline services and the need to continue to provide them against the context of ongoing community transmission, and then the normal winter pressures that we face year on year, which could well be magnified as well. So there is that's a key piece of work in the coming weeks and months. Couple of other things that's worth highlighting to board members: 2 ongoing consultations from Scottish Government and confirmation from Government that the self-isolation support grant scheme has been extended through to December, and there is a consultation which ends later this month, proposing to extend the legislation which affects that through to autumn 2022. And I think that is reflective of the fact that there are no guarantees that we will be out of COVID-related disruption certainly during the first half and indeed later into 2022. And a further consultation with regards to a broad range of legislative measures which were introduced or have been introduced throughout the past 18 months on a temporary basis, and the intention is to mainstream these measures into legislation as levers for any future pandemics or indeed any future issues that we will see related to COVID. And I would certainly commend board members to give consideration to those consultations and whether there's anything relevant to feedback for respective agencies. And finally, just to highlight that I'm sure we've all saw it in the news yesterday, but the vaccination certification vote took place in the Scottish Parliament yesterday and has put through. So we have been discussing. We discussed it yesterday at our licensing liaison group about the implications of that locally, and obviously there are certain aspects where we're requiring a bit of further clarity and 1 or 2 areas of concern that we are hopeful that will be clarified in the coming weeks.
Thanks, Mark. Can I take any questions for Valerie, Annie or Mark, please? Not seeing anybody. I've got my 2 devices now to see. One can see hands and the other can see speaks. So hopefully I should be okay. Yeah, well, thanks very much for that. I think in terms of the vaccine passports or the vaccine certification, it's still a little bit unclear as to how that's going to work. I mean, there was one, I don't know whether it's in England, where people have to know the date they had their vaccination. The trouble is that a lot of people will not necessarily have recorded the date they had their vaccination in order to be able to get that. So more information on that would certainly be useful, I think. Okay, so are we happy to note the response part of the item and then go on to the recovery plan, where, let's go back to my notes. Richard, are you and I think it's yourself and Serena that are taking the recovery plan, is it? Richard.
Yes, thanks, Leader. As I mentioned, this is the piece of work that we undertook following direction from Community Planning Executive Group and previous Community Planning Partnership Board, highlighting the key issues from each of the various agency recovery documents, recovery plans that require a multi-agency approach. The key ask, I think, for today through you, Leader, is to obviously take any feedback, any comments, but also then for partners to consider identifying a lead that we can then work with, and Serena and I will then obviously engage and drive this forward and report back to the partnership. But Serena and I are happy to take questions through you.
Thanks, Richard. So, have we got any questions or comments on the recovery plan? And then I think we're looking for nominations of individuals to represent the different organisations on the group. Okay, why is she not showing on here? Helen.
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, no, heartened to see that lead officers are going to be appointed, because the recovery plan looked really good, but there weren't any people assigned to it, and there wasn't a timeline, an obvious timeline. Richard, have you got in mind when the actions need to be completed by? Is that the next evolution of the plan?
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Helen. Yes, that's what we'll be working through next. But Serena, I don't know whether you want to come in and provide a wee bit more detail, if that's okay.
Yeah, certainly. This is the draft recovery plan, but it's a dynamic document, Helen, so it will evolve as we move forward with it. The importance of the lead officers will help to engage that pace of change, and we will, once we get them aligned and assigned, then we will certainly be working with partners to identify, achievable timescales at pace. We're also aligning it to the review of all of the strategies and plans, because we have quite a number of them that are coming up for review over the coming months. We have tried to capture everything where we've had a gap, and I'm just going back to the workforce one. We haven't captured that, the objective number 1, but it does really kind of focus on development of a systematic and system-wide approach for recruitment, really for younger people. But I think you're right, we need to widen that, in that workforce summit, so I can absolutely add some more detail into the plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Leader. I mean, I guess I don't know if you're wanting people now, but I'm certainly, Richard, I'd certainly take this back to Norma and we'll discuss which ones we'll lead on, absolutely.
Thanks for that, Helen. But Derek.
Thank you, Leader, and thanks, colleagues. Good piece of work and very much endorse it. I think what we're all clear about is where we started earlier in 2 aspects. One, the workforce challenge, and secondly, COVID is still with us. So I think we need to be clear, we're doing this within existing resources. So very good, we're going to identify lead officers, but that's within existing resources. So that's exactly the approach. I agree entirely with Helen around timescales and all of those things. So that's entirely the right way forward. We just need to be very clear about this current operating context, and it is severely challenging, and therefore I would urge us to ensure that within the document we potentially identify our top 5 that we collectively agree on are the most critical, because I sense that we're ambitious, nothing wrong with that, absolutely right. However, we also have to be realistic given the operating context, and therefore, if pressed, what's our top 5 that we want to think about? Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Derek. I've got then Nick and Jane.
Thank you very much, Leader. I certainly welcome the document, and I welcome the emphasis on putting some energy behind it by having appropriate officers assigned to each of the areas. And I agree with the comments about getting timelines and officers assigned to particular actions. I guess the only thing, when I stood back from the document, there were some strategic things I felt. There's a strategic framework that I feel needs to sit around this document. For me, some of the themes that emerge from looking at all the areas seem to theme around things like equity of opportunity for people in the population, something about the inequalities and deprivation of particular communities. And then the third one was one we've already discussed, which is the workforce issues, but more significantly and as a strategic capacity, so the population support issues and growth issues that we've already agreed. So it felt to me that, and Derek's just referenced it, how do we focus in the short term because of the COVID position we find ourselves in on what are the top 5 priorities? It feels to me that if we were to look at each of these particular areas of action, but actually identify how they contribute to those 3 strategic issues that we face and what's their contribution to those 3 issues, we might end up with far more tailored action that has more immediate impact in terms of the perception of the people and of the communities we're trying to serve.
Thanks, Nick. Jane.
Just a very quick comment, Leader. It's really about the what people were saying already about the themes that surround this recovery plan, and to identify maybe the 5 priorities. Because what I'm conscious of is that the public were deeply interested, really interested in how we tackled the crisis, and I think the information that went out was really greatly appreciated. You know, communities were they felt involved because they knew what was happening. And I think that's a real skill that we've got to try and capitalize on and keep using. So it's not totally clear to me in the plan how we would be communicating it so that we absolutely get the communities engaged and alongside us. And just as an aside, the last year, we had a winter which was, now Valerie will tell me, and whether it was to do with the actual virus of flu or whether it was to do with the fact that people were hand washing and being careful, you know, so which came first, I'm not absolutely certain. But because the public were engaged and understood that they had a role to play, I think we can harness that. So I'm just wanting to be sure that there will be somebody who is totally focused on getting this clear message out about what's happening and why.
Do Richard or Serena want to respond to the points that have been made?
I'll kick off through you, Leader, and then maybe pass on to Serena if there's anything to add. But I think that's been really, really helpful. I think the suggestions are really well made. We'll absolutely reach out through colleagues and look to sort of embrace that strategic framework, those key issues, you know, focusing on maybe 4 or 5 key themes, and absolutely agree with Councillor Maitland that the communication and engagement with the communities is going to be absolutely critical in terms of supporting the delivery of the document. So yeah, really, really helpful comments. Thank you, Leader. Serena, anything to add?
Yes, thank you. This is the initial stages of the development of the recovery plan, and it should and will be supported by a comms plan. So I think we can give some reassurance that that's something that we have already in the planning and development. So we'll bring that back to community plan and partnership at a later date.
Thanks. There's a number of comments in the chat, but I'll read out the one from Andrew Wood because he's got a bad signal, so he's not actually able to get in. To tell us that Sweztrans had met with the Transport Minister and outlined their work on a joint partnership working with the Council on the new transport model, and that the Minister was interested in what they were doing and wanted to be kept informed as financial support might be found to take forward a pilot scheme. So that's a useful piece of information. And Nick has also reminded us that the Convention of the South of Scotland is coming up on the 4th of October, and there will be 3 ministers probably present at that will be able to make some of the case too. Okay. Derek, I see you've got your hand up. I don't know if it's a legacy hand or if that's you wanting back in.
Back in, please, Leader. Thank you. It was just to reaffirm the points around communications and working with communities. You'll all have heard me saying it regularly. We're blessed with good communities, a vibrant voluntary and community sector. When we explain, when we describe, when we ask for their support, 9 times out of 10 we get it, and therefore the points made are absolutely crucial, that we are going to have a challenging winter regardless of the weather we face or not, and that will depend on us all working coherently together with our communities and messaging and involving them and reassuring them. So it's just to reaffirm that we're very much on that through the RRR team, and we'll very much ensure that there's the details of that brought before the board, because it's so important. And as I say, we're so fortunate that we know that we have an understanding public the vast majority of the time, and therefore the more we involve them, the more we explain, we are doing that education and awareness raising. And alongside that, we also have forthcoming community conversations coming up, which will build on the success we've had, and that will again be an opportunity to do that at the right time. So it's just to thank colleagues for their support in these matters and reassure the board that that communication with our communities through our partners is absolutely crucial to successfully managing the demands that we're going to be facing. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Derek. Helen, your hand is up also. Do you want back in?
Sorry, no.
Thanks. So yeah, there's a bit of agreement in the chat and on the way forward. Now, can I ask Richard, what is it what do you need people to do today in terms of this, nominating officers? And note that Helen had said that she would discuss this with Norma and get back to you as far as the third sector interface were concerned. But
yeah, thanks, Leader. That's absolutely fine and welcome, appreciated. I think if I could ask all partners to do the same and then come back to me after the meeting with nominated leads, that would be most appreciated. And just picking up the comments in the chat, I think the commentary sort of ministerial interest in informing ministers is going to be absolutely key. Clearly, Deputy First Minister is driving this agenda on a national level, and we'll absolutely feed into that. But obviously, I think the work that we've done to date and the help and support direction from the board today will help us to get a wee bit ahead of the game on that. So much appreciated, Leader, and thanks everybody for the comments. We'll take it forward on that basis.
thanks. Do you have a timeline when you would like to have those nominations in with you?
As soon as possible, but perhaps within the next couple of weeks at the outside, please, Leader.
Thanks for that. Okay, if there's nothing further on that, we have, I'm assuming that we are content to agree the COVID-19 recovery plan, although some comments have been made about the need for prioritisation and so on. But other than that, so I suppose there may be one or two tweaks, and I've got some very, sort of pernickety type of questions, but I'll do those offline rather than subject everybody to them. Just one or two minor points within it. But if we're happy to agree the recovery plan with possibly with some amendment in terms of prioritisation and so on. Okay, thanks. And then we are considering the nominations for the lead officers to develop the early actions and asking all partners to get their nominations in to Richard and Serena within the next couple of weeks, and as soon as possible, if that's possible. Okay, can we move on to agenda item 3, which is digital participation charter. Joanna Campbell, Principal and Chief Executive of Dumfries and Galloway College, and Stephen Jack, Lifelong Learning Manager, both here. Joanna here in the hall in person, and Stephen online to talk to the report, and I will hand over to Joanna to provide this strategic overview to this item. Thank you.
Morning everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and you have the paper in your pack. Stephen Jack also joins me as well. He's online. And really I just wanted to outline the 3 dimensions of the paper. I'll give you an overview of the digital skills aspect of it, and then Stephen's going to come in and talk about the digital participation charter. So what we're keen to do is to explore ways in which, through partnership working, we can maximise digital skills across the region. And there's two elements to that, the work that we're doing already on the Digital Skills Hub and also the Digital Participation Charter. So I'm just going to give you a little overview of the Digital Skills Hub. There is an overview in the paper that you have, but actually there's been a lot of work that has not been captured in that probably is worthy of bringing something back at a later stage if that's a possibility. So the Digital Skills Hub was launched in June this year, and the aim of that was to bring key agencies in the south of Scotland together to address the digital skills challenge. We're also working with partners in Borders College as well, and what we've done is we've established a group which consists of membership from the two local authorities, the colleges, universities, third sector, Dumfries and Galloway, SDS, South of Scotland Enterprise Agency, and really crucially employers across the south of Scotland. And through the Digital Skills Hub, we've got 3 principal programmes of work that have started and are starting to make a significant impact. So the first of those is CPD, and we're running a digital mentoring scheme with lecturers and school teachers, and we've connected up employers, some of whom are large blue chip companies, to provide expertise on digital and all aspects of digital so that people can bring that into their teaching practice. The other programme of work that we started was employer engagement, and this is really an exciting opportunity for us because what we've been able to do is we've been able to schedule a series of 6 events which are due to commence in November, and the content of those events has been determined by an industry advisory group that reports in through the Digital Skills Hub. Some of the topics that we are going to be covering include staying safe online, growing your business online, resilience, particularly around cyber, and also the use of data. Now, the timing of this is really good because the DEBS review, which SOS have published recently through partners at SDS, have indicated that 17% of our communities are digitally engaged. Sorry, 17% of our business community are digitally engaged. So there's a huge gap there that we can actually provide support for. And that 17% is actually lower than Scotland as a whole. So, and then the last programme of work is around educational pathways. So what we've been doing is we've been looking at educational pathways and digital skills running from school college partnerships right through to university level. And as we're all aware, higher education in the south of Scotland and particularly in Dumfries and Galloway, there could be more opportunities for young people. So we're keen to use this particular area to maximise what those opportunities look like. And we've been using the hub and spoke model, the hub and spoke investment that we had from the South of Scotland Enterprise Agency and the Scottish Government to maximise the delivery of these individual events that we're running. So in terms of the educational pathways, we're focusing on cyber, data science and sustainable construction with a focus on climate tech. So what we're keen to do is we're keen to map out how digital skills and the need to increase those in Dumfries and Galloway fits into the national and pan South of Scotland landscape. We're working with SDS, Skills Development Scotland, sorry, need to remember that not everybody knows these acronyms, and we've got direct involvement in the shaping up of their Digital Economy Skills Action Plan. I'm going to pass over to Stephen now because he's going to talk a wee bit about the Digital Participation Charter, and then what I'll do is I'll come back, Stephen will hand back to me and we'll just outline the way forward and then we'll open it up for questions and discussion. Stephen?
Thanks, Joanna. I'm sure many partners will be familiar with the Charter. It's been around for many years, and as you can see in the report at section 2.1, there's 5 kind of key headline themes that link back to the Charter itself. Following the discussion at the last Community Planning Executive Group, what we're keen to do is bring together the strategic partners closer together around the theme of digital. And as you can see at the moment, there's only a handful of partners within Dumfries and Galloway that have signed up to the Charter at the moment. So what we would like to see is that all community planning partners make a commitment to the Charter. It's not time consuming, it doesn't take long to complete. It gives access to a wide range of resources and also shows our commitment to digital. There's also the SCVO digital skills checklists for foundation skills and for work and for life, which are really helpful to work through with communities, learners on the ground, and to get a baseline. And for example, the council are planning to do one of those surveys starting within the next few weeks with council staff to try and identify a baseline and where the gaps are. So I think if partners could come on board with that, it would provide a good grounding to trying to take forward the issues that's highlighted at 3.1 and the opportunities, the significant opportunities there to work together in terms of addressing the digital gap within the region. Thank you. So I'll hand back to Joanna.
Thanks, Stephen. So in terms of the recommendations and the way forward, you'll see that there's 3 recommendations in the paper that you have. So essentially what we're looking to do is to knit together some of the feedback that we've had from partners. We're aware that a number of CPP partners are running a number of surveys on this important topic. So we're keen to assess that feedback and collate it into a broader piece of work, linking it in with the Digital Skills Hub. If you think it's something that you would like to see back in the form of an update, then happy to provide that. And the other thing that I would ask for consideration is that we potentially look at a digital skills strategy for Dumfries and Galloway. So that's everything from me, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Joanna and Stephen. Can I open the meeting up for questions? Helen.
Yeah, just to say that it's really good to see the hub working together, and Third Dumfries Galloway really happy to be already signed up for the charter. And as I think Joanna and Stephen know, we're digital inclusion is a key part of a key priority for us going forward as well. So I just wanted to sort of update the board really briefly that we're currently undertaking a research project to understand digital exclusion, particularly in disadvantaged communities. So we're excited to be working with the hub and the college, and looking forward to feeding that in.
Thanks, Helen. Nick.
Thanks very much for that presentation, and fully support the objectives of it. I've just got a couple of comments really. First of all, I think the NHS recognises as an anchor institution, it has a responsibility to its staff to ensure that they have as much skills in the digital area as possible, but actually also our staff offer a bridge to communities and people, and the potential for them to help to cascade skills and stuff into the community as well. So that's important. And I will take it back to the board to get formal agreement to get to sign up to the principles of this. I just had a detailed question, if that's okay, which is from the documents presented, I was wondering whether each of the organisations, when they're doing the assessments of their digital skills in their staff groups, have a baseline assessment against which they then grade competence of some kind, or, obviously lots of things about particular skills and uses of certain types of digital approaches, but also I guess there's also something about access to the appropriate equipment to ensure that can happen. So is there a common understanding of a set of assessment areas that are being used across all the organisations?
Okay, Stephen?
Yes, thanks, Deirdre. Happy to come in. So I'd be happy to share in terms of the SCVO digital skills checklist and how we've approached that, Nick. Obviously, we haven't commenced that. It'll be in a few weeks, and I'm happy to share the question set that certainly the council's going to use, and other partners might want to use that standard set and adapt it. And we've put a few adaptive questions in just to reflect some of the specifics within the council itself. It asks questions like, you know, in terms of responses, I can do this, I can't do this, I would like to learn how to do this. So, you know, that's what we're going to be using as the base to try and identify particularly the areas that staff want to learn more about, and then we can work up some tailored, whether it's self-help videos or using the champions model, which is being developed as well. But I do think there's more connections that can be done with strategic partners, and as detailed in the paper at 3.1, I think it would be good to get key reps together to work through, you know, those very issues, and such as sharing surveys, so there is a bit of a standard across the piece, which would make it easier to analyse and assess.
Thanks, Stephen. Jane.
Leader, I speak as someone who is baffled and frightened by the way that my emails are brigaded by my iPad. So you'll understand that I'm speaking from a position of near ignorance. I'm very conscious that the independent review of adult social care has been asking us how we are going to improve care which were delivered to our communities. And one of the things that I think is really trickling through is that we could improve cost efficiencies in training. And I just, it's a sort of very open question. I suppose I'm thinking aloud, but how are the partners going to bring together opportunities for, I don't know, for example, care at home, which is partly practical, of course cannot be done digitally, but partly could be done digitally to improve skills. And I just would like to be sure that, you know, the college is in a position through the partnership and through NHS and indeed through the council to bring together the opportunities for people to train together and reduce costs. I'm sort of, you know, I'm floundering here. So help me, please.
Joanna.
Thanks, Jane. Okay, so we've looked at specific subject areas that we thought were a priority for Dumfries and Galloway in terms of digital aspects. We have representation from the Digital Healthcare Innovation Centre on our membership group, or our programme board, I should say. However, I'm keen to pick up on the points that you've raised, and if you think that there's something that we could do that we're not currently doing, then I'm happy to take that offline, if that's helpful.
Thanks, John. Stephen, do you want to add anything?
Maybe more on the general point about training, I think, and particularly maybe looking at digital skills. You know, I think Councillor Maitland's points are absolutely on point in terms of there's expertise within each respective organisation, and there's got to be value there about, you know, standardising approaches, you know, sharing, you know, skills and efficiencies in there as well. And I think, you know, I keep coming back to this point at 3.1, where I think that's one of the key issues that, again, whether it's a small short life working group looking at these things specifically to drive forward digital at pace, but, you know, it's just seeing the different approaches that's taken place across organisation, who's the key links and leads within those organisations that's the digital skills experts, and then sharing the knowledge and trying to standardise things. I think that would be a real help going forward.
Thanks, Stephen. Jane, does that answer your question?
It does. I've got nothing specific in mind at all. It's the generality of trying to use our resources more effectively and efficiently, because, well, for obvious reasons.
Thanks, Jane. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else asking to speak. So are we prepared to agree that all organisations represented on the CPPB should make a commitment to the digital participation charter? It sounds like a lot of the organisations already have done so, but That should be a common aim. And then are we content to agree that the college explores the potential digital collaboration opportunities outlined at 3.1? And finally, we're being asked to note the opportunities linked to the Digital Skills Hub as Joanna has highlighted, and taken board comments and suggestions made by the community planning partners. Okay. Thank you very much, Joanna. Thanks, Stephen. Okay. We can move on to item 4, which is the update on the Dumfries and Galloway climate emergency. And I have Simon Fieldhouse and Sarah Farrell here to speak to the report. Simon.
Thank you, Leader. So members obviously have the report in front of themselves. Obviously, I'd just like to sort of bring a couple of other additional items into the for members' sort of consideration and for noting in relation to some action that's just been undertaken recently. So just to update members, since the last Community Planning Partnership Board meeting that we attended in March, where we obviously unveiled our route map moving forward, and obviously sort of the region's carbon baseline emissions. We've undertaken some preliminary work with Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, who are in contact with us after that, to look at obviously the opportunity for shared consideration of sites across the region and property that they own, to look obviously at how they might become more carbon neutral, and whether or not there were community benefits in terms of utilising some of that land for either electric vehicle charging or for generation through solar. So I think that's very positive. Those are ongoing discussions. Obviously, we'd like to extend that opportunity to other partners around the table from the Community Planning Partnership Board to see how we can obviously align better. We're continuing to work very closely, obviously, with SOS, particularly obviously around their transition sort of framework document that they produced earlier this year. They've now got a green director in place through Martin Valenti, and obviously we are making sure that we don't duplicate, that we obviously work complementary with SOS to look at how we move things forward. And with that end, obviously we're working very closely to look at obviously things around natural capital, as well as obviously sort of the energy generation and opportunities there. Also, just to sort of let members know, obviously the Boardland sort of programme is moving forward through the Energy Master Plan that we're making sure that we as a local authority engage very closely with, which is very positive. There is also sort of, as part of the regional growth deals, there's been new guidance from the Scottish Government, which means that we need to carbon account all of our projects that come through, things like the Boardlands and other growth deals. So we're obviously looking at the implications of that and how we obviously look at whole life carbon accounting. And finally, last point I'll make before I obviously sort of open things up for members to look at questions, is that the council has just been awarded funding under the Nature Restoration Fund, which will be discussed at next week's Economy and Resources Committee. But obviously the proposals that are coming out there is looking obviously at opportunities for increased tree planting and local grant schemes to help communities across the region. So we're very keen to obviously look at how we can do that and obviously look at the sequestration there. And I think that's it at this moment in time, Leader. If we go back to the report, just for noting, section 3 in the recommendations, the numbering seems to have been slightly out of kilter, so they should read 3.1, 3.2 and 3.3. It doesn't at this moment in time, and my apologies for that. But just to draw through the report, probably the most important steps that we've got is what's happening next, Chair, in relation to our work around the Citizens Panel. As part of the Council's 12-point action plan, we were obviously tasked to look at how we could obviously take that as an opportunity for further engagement with communities across the board. We've undertaken a slightly delayed piece of work, but we now have obviously sort of a support mechanism in place through the Community Chartering Network, which is a group that's undertaken significant consultations around climate, green energy and community sort of enhancement across Scotland. They are now working with us to look at obviously over the next sort of 12 months to develop our Citizens Panel offering. So we are bringing that one forward, along with a regional stakeholders group that obviously we would like to look at extending places to members of the Community Partnership Board. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add?
My apologies, Chair. I should have mentioned at the start. Sarah, unfortunately, due to personal reasons, is unable to join us today, so I'll be taking any questions and picking up on her behalf.
Thanks very much, Simon. Can I invite questions, please? Okay. I'll just give people time to think about what, if they want to. Can I just ask a couple of short questions now? 2.5 indicated that 6 individual communities had been identified across the region, and that seemed to, well, the timeline indicates that happened in sort of July to August. Has that actually been delayed, or have they been identified? And if they have, can you disclose who they are?
Thank you, Chair. So we had some work undertaken in July and August. It stretched a little bit into the to the very end of August, but we've engaged with our cross-party working group. So obviously, sort of members from the council's cross-party working group engaged with CCN and ourselves sort of towards the end of August. We have identified 6 communities across the region at this moment in time. So we have Stranraer, we have Dalry, we have Dumfries, we have Sanker, we have Annan, we have Langham, and we also have Castle Douglas, I believe. But I can, in order to sort of just for completeness, Chair, I'll make sure obviously that as part of the papers that we get a formal follow-up on that coming out to all members.
Thanks for that. And then my other, this is just, I mean, just because I was surprised to read it in 1.6. I just wondered why grassland had, which used to be a sink, and I would have thought would have been a sink for CO2, is now a net source. And I was wondered what there's a problem. Is it the animals that graze on the grassland, or what's changed that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, sort of obviously the work around sort of climate sequestration is obviously changing on a fairly regular basis, and the latest guidance is obviously due to disturbance potentially in grassland through different types of grassland management in terms of animals, pasteurisation. That actually sort of the grassland that we were taking as being a sink previously is now potentially got a sort of a slightly sort of a net release of CO2 at this moment in time, which is obviously going to impact on our sort of, I suppose, our figures moving forward. It's worthwhile highlighting, obviously, we're not too sure exactly what that would, create in terms of our overall sort of perspective in terms of moving towards net neutral. But obviously, it further reiterates, obviously, the desire and the acceptance locally that obviously, partners like NFUS and Scottish Land and Estates are critical to making sure that we can obviously move this forward and understand the pressures they're under and how we as a partner can obviously support them to look at how we can, speed up their journey to net neutral.
Thanks, Simon. Yes, it's just a bit perturbing, given that we do have rather a lot of grassland, and in Dumfries and Galloway we had assumed that was to our favour, but possibly not. Okay, is anybody else wanting to come in on the climate emergency report? Doesn't look like it, so we've been asked to support the development of the citizens panel. I'm assuming that we're happy to support that. Also to encourage community planning partners to engage with the net zero ambition. And I would hope that we're already engaged with that. And finally, to note the activity undertaken by the Council to progress the assumptions outlined in Appendix 1. And I'll thank Simon for his report. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader.
Item 5 is the business briefing, and Stephen Jack is going to speak to the report. Stephen.
Thank you, Leader. Just a few highlights before I bring in Kirsty Peden, who's going to give a very recent update on the Resettlement Board. So most partners will be aware that Professor Malcolm Foley has taken up the position of chair of the new Poverty and Inequalities Partnership for 2021-23. It's currently undertaken an induction programme and starting to meet with partners. At the Community Planning Executive Group, the Children's Services Executive Group plan was agreed. The terms of reference have been reviewed, and the group's actually changed its name now to the Children's Services Strategic and Planning Partnership and is chaired by Jim Brown, Education Officer. The risk register has also been reviewed to take into account the new arrangements for tackling poverty and inequalities, the updated arrangements for recovery, LOIP, locality plan, annual reporting, and the replacement of the local rural partnerships with the locality hub model. So I would just like to bring in Kirsty now, who's going to give an update on the Resettlement Board. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks, Leader. I'm very pleased to report to partners that due to the joint effort of a range of colleagues and volunteers from across the partnership, that we were amongst the first areas in Scotland to welcome an Afghan family, of which a member was previously employed by the UK government to our region. And that due to the sort of fast and flexible approach that's been taken, then, you know, I'm pleased to say that they're settling in really well in their new home here. As highlighted in the report, and I'm aware there's quite a great deal of public interest in the most recently announced scheme, which is actually for Afghan citizens to resettle. But for the moment, we still await information from the UK government in terms of what the details of that scheme will look like. And so I'm trying to make clear to people that currently we have an agreement to participate in the locally employed scheme, and that we'll await further information on the refugee scheme as it develops.
Thanks, Kirsty. If I could just add to that, I attended a webinar with Robert Jenrick, the UK Secretary of State for Communities, Housing and Local Government last Friday, during which he indicated that there would, in terms of the new scheme for Afghan citizens, the UK government was going to offer, I think it was 12,500 per person for 12, or 10,500 per person for 12 months. Now that may not be long enough. I think we would maybe want to lobby the UK government for support for longer than that. There would also be a separate £850 for English language support, and funding for housing in terms of bridging accommodation and quarantine accommodation, and a £5 million discretionary fund for larger sized households where their accommodation would exceed the benefits cap. That's probably not such a pressing issue in Dumfries and Galloway, where our rental costs are a lot lower than they are in some of the cities, but that was what he was indicating at that time. So I would hope that we would be able to participate in that scheme, albeit that I think we would want to lobby for support for longer for some of the Afghan citizens who might find it more difficult actually to get employment here, you know, if they've not been working with the UK government and, for example, don't have English language skills and so on. I wonder if I see Helen saying she was pleased to hear that. Anybody else wishing to speak on anything that's in this report? Helen, would you like to come in?
Yes, it was. That was very good to hear about the Afghan resettlement. That's excellent that we're playing our part. But sort of on the broader point about the locality planning, section 2.7, Norma just asked me all to update you from our point of view that we feel that the partner engagement is going really well, and we're kind of trying to exploit the, you know, locality hubs and community works best when it has a degree of autonomy, so that we can meet the needs of each community really responsibly as per the different needs for the hub. But Norma is meeting Kirsty regularly to agree that there is consistency across the four. So we're trying to kind of balance that world of consistency with meeting local need. That was the update from Norma, but it did make me think in the context of our previous discussion, and I think that the report makes reference to the fact that with the COVID response scaling down, we've got time to widen the locality hubs to think more widely, but it sounds like we're going to need to activate the locality hubs quite specifically over the winter, and it kind of ties in with Councillor Maitland's point about communication, you know, and somebody else made the point that we worked so well together before. We mustn't forget that we have now got this mechanism embedded and working really well, and to continue that. And obviously we're right behind that.
Yes, thanks, Helen. That's an important point. Thank you. I'll just give people a few seconds to get. Sometimes people can't. Yeah, it takes a little while for the system to respond. So I'm not seeing anybody else with their hands up or indicating they wish to speak. So are we happy to note the position of the issues in the report? And give it a few seconds for people to respond. Thanks for that. Okay, next item is the key strategic issues update, and which is a standing quarterly update on the plans and strategies that contribute to the local outcomes improvement plan. So as usual, I will go through them in order to allow members the opportunity to comment or ask questions, and comments and questions will be recorded and relayed back to the lead officer for each of the plans. So if I can start with the Children's Services Plan, any comments to be fed back to Jim Brown on that one? Okay. And next one is the Community Justice Outcome Improvement Plan. Anything on that? Okay, next one is the Community Learning and Development Partner Strategic Plan. Anything on that one? Oh, I did see a hand on that. It's Stephen. Stephen.
Thanks, Leader. It was just to confirm for partners that the new CLD plan is nearing finalisation and will be going to the October Council Communities Committee, and then we'll come back to the Community Plan and Partnership thereafter. I would certainly like to thank key partners, particularly including Third Sector, Dumfries and Galloway College and SOS for their input into the plan. It's been a real team effort in terms of supporting the community engagement element and scoping out the priorities. So I just wanted to thank all partners for their assistance to date with that.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you for that. If there's nothing further, if we can move on to the Employability and Skills Plan. The Health and Social Care Strategic Plan. Helen.
Just to reiterate the point I made earlier, this is perhaps a better place for it, that when we've got strategic plans that are being commissioned out of sync with timetable, inevitably, it's just really important to make sure that they are integrated so that when, critically, the people on the ground receive the best sort of tied up, joined up care and support, but also so that all of us working in the system can understand what it is we're all mutually trying to achieve.
Thanks, Helen. Does anybody want to respond to that, or just we want? Okay, we'll just obviously feed that back to Julie. The Local Child Poverty Action Plan. The Local Development Plan. Local Housing Strategy. It's quite a long report because the SHIP is going to the next meeting of Economy and Resources. The Poverty and Inequality Strategy. Regional Transport Strategy. And the South of Scotland Regional Economic Strategy, which was, as Helen pointed out, it was agreed at the meeting of the Regional Economic Partnership this month. Helen?
Yes, sorry, Leader. It was just a comment about the transport strategy, and this is just me not just being interested. It said it was updated in 2008. Is it? Is there? Does the regional transport strategy get updated on a regular basis?
I don't know. Can anybody answer that one? Derek?
Happy to come in, Leader. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Helen. That's a major issue for us, and yes, it is due for renewal, and currently at the present time with the current context of transport, it's never a better time for it to be reviewed, and that's something we'll be bringing forward in the coming months to the board. But we've got Andrew Wood, for example, on the call today from Westrans, so yeah, big issue, and it will certainly be being reviewed with the current context significantly important. So no, happy to reassure you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. I don't know. I believe Andrew's got some connection problems. I'm not sure if he's. Andrew, can I ask you if you're able to get in? Do you want to say anything? I'm not sure whether Andrew's actually managed to remain connected, unfortunately. And okay, there was nothing on the South of Scotland Regional Economic Strategy, which has been agreed at the Regional Economic Partnership. Okay, thanks very much for that. And we're now looking at the Community Planning Partnership Board Forward Programme, which you will note that there is an extra meeting in October, which is a meeting with the Youth Council. This, I think, now, the last discussion I had around this, it was likely to take place in the week beginning the 25th of October. I don't know whether anybody's able to update on that. I think.
Thanks, Leader. I can give a quick update. I had a chat with Mark yesterday, and he was suggesting that the preferred date from the Youth Council was earlier than that. I think possibly the 11th of October. So we'll need to reflect next week on that, about whether we go with that or look at a later date, perhaps.
Yeah, the problem, I suppose, is that really the Youth Council wants to have the meeting with us before the elections to the Youth Council in November. Now, during the discussion we'd had before, I think that the reason we'd gone to the end of October was to enable the Youth Council to have, if you like, the school holiday or whatever the holiday period to be able to prepare for it. But there's maybe been a change of plan. But we were less keen on having it during the October recess, just because some officers with children, whatever, may need to take time off during that period, so it might be more difficult. You know, we don't want to encroach on people's annual leaves. But
so that's great. No, I'm happy to liaise back with Mark and see if the later in October is a possibility, and I'll confirm either way what the position will be. Okay.
I suppose just need to sort of coordinate with diaries and so on. And certainly the council diary at the moment is extremely busy, so I'm sure the same is true for all the other partners with everything that's going on at the moment. So anyway, the October meeting, whenever it is, it would be the joint meeting, and it's going to concentrate on suicide prevention workshop and the play charter update, so it's issues around young people. I could just say that we had the joint meeting between the full council and the Youth Council earlier this week, and it was extremely successful. I have to say that the youth councillors had a lot of very thoughtful things to contribute to that, and I'm sure they'll do the same with the Community Planning Partnership Board as well. Then we also have the November meeting, which is part of our normal meetings, and I think we had agreed that we would bring another paper back to that earlier on. I'm trying to think what it was, but we had an agreement that we were going to bring something else onto that agenda.
I think it was maybe the joint workforce item, which
Yes, that's
Helen
right, yes.
had mentioned.
Yes.
Yes.
So we put the joint workforce on that. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to remind us of the need to bring the workforce plan back into the meetings. I'm just wondering whether we should challenge ourselves a bit more, actually, robustly on that. That at every meeting over the next cycle of the winter, that we ought to ensure we have a focused conversation on the actions that come out of the summit on workforce, so that we can ensure we are tracking and monitoring any agreements that we have on joint actions or individual actions on that.
Okay, so you propose that becomes a standing item on the agenda for the Community Planning Partnership? Anything else on any other things that you think should be coming back to that meeting or to future meetings? Helen.
More of a general comment, I might have missed it, but have we got a 2022 plan and rough plan of subjects?
Well, we don't seem to have a published one.
We've got provisional dates for meetings that just need to be firmed up, and then we'll prepare the proposed 2022 plan, Helen.
Great, thank you.
I presume they would be similar to this, to be March, June, September, and excuse me, be March, June, September, and November, but we don't actually have the dates for it yet.
Yeah. Leader, we might want to add maybe a digital update to the November meeting as well. We spoke about that earlier on, so probably be good timing to bring something back.
Yeah, certainly agreed. Thanks, Stephen. If there's nothing further, I'm happy to close the meeting and thank everybody for their attendance today. And we shall see you in October.